Okay. Howdy doody and hello, geographers. This is our final video lesson for this little series, possibly the final one ever. If school goes back to normal, whatever that means. Okay, is everybody equal? Short answer, nah. Long answer, nah. Here's your learning goals. You're going to know about inequality between non-Indigenous and Indigenous Australians. Are all Australians equal? Indigenous Australians have lower levels of health, education, employment and income than other Australians. It's just a fact. Why does that disadvantage exist? There's a number of reasons. Their land was taken away by settlers, so where are they going to live, grow their food? They were moved away from their homelands. It had a very negative effect on their spiritual well-being, and they are still currently discriminated against in many ways. Now, interesting point here. It's hard to measure Indigenous well-being because a lot of things that are important to Indigenous people, like community, language, traditional knowledge, are hard to measure. Just because they're hard to measure doesn't mean that they shouldn't be measured, though. Of course they should be measured. I think, actually, you might find the differences between qualitative and quantitative data. It's very easy to calculate quantitative data, numeric data. You just go out there and start counting stuff. But the quality, how do you determine the quality of someone's well-being? You got to go out there and ask questions, and the responses won't be numbers. So I'm going to show you some shocking stats. Only a quarter of Indigenous Australians had completed Year 12 in 2011. Life expectancy is way lower for Indigenous people. Infant mortality rates are way higher for Indigenous people, meaning infant mortality means your child died before the age of 5. So 6.2 children out of every 1,000 born in an Indigenous community will die before they're 5. That's almost double the non-Indigenous rate. You're 24 times more likely to go to jail as an Indigenous youth. Not all of that number can be explained by different crime rates. Indigenous people, as can be found everywhere in the world, those from the non-dominant ethnic group are much more likely to be involved with the police. Like, you're more likely to be pulled over in the first place. Like drug crime in the US is a good example. Whites and African Americans take drugs almost exactly the same amount, but African Americans get arrested for it way more because they get pulled over way more. So the policy that the government has to try to reduce the gap in well-being for Indigenous people compared to non-Indigenous is called, it's called Closing the Gap. It started in 2015. Or maybe this is just the 2015 progress report. So there you go. So there's 6 goals. They haven't met that one, haven't met that one, haven't met that one. They're on track to that one, haven't met that one, and they're on track. So not doing that great. Out of 7, they're only on track in 2 of them. Could do better, Australia, could do better. Let's watch a video called Closing the Gap. Okay, I would like you to read chapter 11.6. Answer these questions in your exercise book using the question stem and the answer. So, like, what is discrimination? You're going to say discrimination is, and then your amazing answer. Why is it hard to measure Indigenous well-being? Why might it be hard to measure traditional knowledge? A revision activity. So we've done a few learnings about well-being, I want you to do that quiz. Go there, put your name in, keep doing it until you can get 100%. I will see a list of the names, so I'll know who's done it and who hasn't. So just go there, complete it, you get your results back straight away, and just keep redoing it until you can get 100% every time. Here's another video. It's Briggs, this awesome rapper, on Q&A. Who rules?
As a descendant of what you might call traditional white Australians, my Celtic ancestors were dispossessed by the same people that dispossessed Indigenous Australians. In this we share some common ground. I support possible changes to the flag and the national anthem, but not changing Australia Day. However, I believe that we should be united in respecting the current flag and anthem for as long as they are in place. Why can't we ever seem to build on our common ground and move forward together?
I'll come back to you, Jocelyn, because I cut you off.
I think because we're not recognising enough of what has gone before. I don't think we've sort of spent time to unpack things like what do we sing mindlessly. I can tell you that Peter Dodds McCormack, who wrote the national anthem, is buried in Rookwood Cemetery because I grew up near there. I have some kind of connection to it, but I don't think many people do. And I think we should start with kind of unpacking some of those things and thinking and really, really coming to terms with what that looks like in our communities, you know, around Australia. So they're big issues, and I know that they're very, very emotionally driven and everybody has a story, but sometimes we need to stop and look back at the big ones that we've really interrupted and the generations of trauma that we've, created.
Larry, what do you think?
Oh, an anthem and a flag are intended to unite people. And let's face it, the world has so many problems that we have to navigate. We need a Team Australia approach more than we have any other time in history. So if our anthem and our flag aren't uniting us, let's figure out how to solve that. And by the way, science does prove that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders are the oldest living culture on the planet. So it really doesn't make a lot of sense to call our country young. We should be proud of the fact that we have the oldest living continuous culture in the world.
Do you suspect in that case that the anthem is unintentionally biased or even racist?
I think all of us are subject to unconscious bias. I'm a male champion of change, and a huge part of what we do to deal with gender equality is to kind of unpick the things that we were taught as children, the things that we were taught in school, the things we didn't even know we were being taught. These are unconscious biases. And I think it takes the greatest of goodwill, patience and understanding on all sides of the debate to resolve those so that we can move forward as a country.
Adam, do you want to reflect on the question that was asked? Because the suggestion is maybe some things should change, but until they do, they should be respected.
Well, I think I meet every, idea that I present with respect. The adversity that I face with a great deal of respect. To compare Indigenous disadvantage to any other disadvantage in Australia is vastly, like, it's crazy to me because, up until, I could say, the 80s, my parents got turned away from home ownership. They had the deposit, but as soon as the person who was selling the house found out that they were Indigenous, that house was no longer for sale. And that was the 80s. The disadvantage that we face is still today. It's still here. It hasn't left us. We still wear it. We still wear it in all of our communities. Some of the communities that we have in Australia are third world, and we're one of the richest countries. That is insanity.
You heard Mike's reaction to seeing your video and your take on the anthem and sort of rethinking it from your perspective. Have you generally had a kind of respectful response, or has it been the kickback?
I always get the kickback, man. Like, that's that's just showbiz, baby. That's just part of it. You know what I mean? Like, that's just what happens. Like, people come back at me, you know, like tenfold. I've got a manager, and one of his jobs is deleting the racist comments every day. Every day, and it's a big job. I probably need 2 managers. But the message is so much more important. The message is bigger than me as well. You know, I'm from Shepparton, Victoria. I'm a Yorta Yorta man, and I know I can go home because I know what my values are, and I know, you know, the choices I make and my morals are just, and they reflect my community. That's why I get to do the things I do. So people's backlash to me, it doesn't fly, because I know who I am and I know where I'm from.
Faustina, do you want to reflect on the question that was asked? Which is essentially, yeah, maybe some things should change, but we should do it in a different way, and we should respect the anthem, and we shouldn't change Australia Day, I think the questioner suggested. But if we're going to change the flag and the anthem, we should respect the flag and the anthem until they're changed.
Okay. I think in this process, we really do need to listen to our Aboriginal, our Indigenous leaders. We need to listen to people like Briggs. We need to listen to people like Marsha Langton. And the list goes on in terms of the leaders that we can turn to. I don't think that me being a migrant to this country, I can impose a particular idea as to how this country should, and its symbols should be represented, when there is a culture that is 60,000 years old, that has been, you know, screaming for equality for 230 years and of wanting particular rights. So I don't think that I should be imposing my opinion on that. If anything, I just agree.
I think as well, it's like, you know, change doesn't come from being comfortable.
Exactly.
I have to make myself uncomfortable and wear a lot of that stuff to be able to shift, you know, these ideas and move these things. I have to make myself uncomfortable to make everybody else uncomfortable, so they start talking about it. Change doesn't come when everybody's comfortable.
The reflection activity is quite simple for me to explain. You have to summarise today's lesson in exactly 12 words. Thank you for participating in today's lesson, and as I always like to say, keep it real.